We'll upload these lectures. Okay, all right. So let's start. So today we'll study a model called CIA model. Okay, and look at some more security concepts. Okay, we will look at some of these topics today. Uh, something that we have studied till now. Okay, basic steps for security. Then a classical paper by Ken Thompson. We'll not go through complete paper, but we'll look at the top line concept, main concept. Then we'll study these four important parts: confidentiality, integrity, availability, and authenticity. Then we'll look at remaining one, which is authorization, non-repudiation, access control, privacy, and something that is the weakest link. Okay. Of course, I mean, I've taken contents from many sources. Of course, the main ones are these. Okay. So basic step for security. Suppose you are starting an organization, then you just can't say to your IT guy that it needs to be secure. You'll have to think about security. Okay. So first you have to come up with the security policies. So security policies you write down on a paper or sheet of paper and say that what all we are going to protect and what properties we are trying to enforce. Okay. Like in your organization or your institute, your governing body, maybe your deans and director and many other people will decide what is going to, how do we provide security to staff and students and so on, right? So what are those security, what then they should form the security policies, right? That for example, security guards, there will be security, students will be provided security. Okay, that's first thing. Staff needs to provide security and so on and so forth. And then they the policy that nobody should be allowed to come in the campus just for the sake of, just if somebody from outside wants to see the institute without any approvals and so on, person should not be allowed to get into the campus and classes and so on, right? So these are all security policies. You'll have to write down on paper then. And these policies, of course, will be based on looking at the threats that's possible, right? So threat model your institute will create. Okay, who can be attackers? What can be motivation? What are capabilities? Who can steal goods and so on and so forth, right? All these threats should be seen, and these are used to create policies, and these policies are enforced then, okay, by countermeasures. Okay, creating threat model requires risk assessment. What kind of risks are there and how much we need to spend money for that, right? Okay, how do we handle those risks, right? So from the risk, looking at the threats and risk, we create a threat model, and then based on that we have security policies, and then when we have countermeasures, and then last step could be how do we execute it. Okay, execute all these countermeasures. So these are the basic steps. For any system you design, you'll have to think of these four steps, right? All right. Before that, let me ask you a question. You use a lot of apps, right? On an average, a mobile will have about 80 to 100 apps. Okay, you may have more or less depending on how, what all you want to do. So how many of these apps may contain virus or malware? Any one of you can answer this. Can you say with 100% guarantee that these apps that you are using won't contain any malware? A virus or malicious code or something? Keylogger? Yeah. Who can answer me this? Okay, let me start asking you then one by one. Abhinav Singla, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so what did I ask you?
So there's a network problem here actually, so I cannot understand.
Don't give all these excuses, huh?
So there is actually, so
No,
due to
okay. So you didn't listen. Now you are able to listen to me, right? Be
hello.
attentive in the class. Okay, please be attentive in the class. There's only requirement I have posed, right? Okay. Okay, next person. Now maybe there is no network problem with Anila. B22171. Anila, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please answer the question. What did I ask you?
Uh,
I asked you some question. Just repeat that question. I'm not asking for answer. Because you know, if you know the question, then you can. Please be attentive, Anila. Bhargavi, are you there? Bhargavi, are you there, or you are just logged into session and doing something else? Gagan Gupta.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Okay, very good. Good morning. So you tell me what did I ask you?
Sir, but it's just joined 2 minutes back only. Sorry, sir.
Okay, all right. Anybody in the class? See, 5 people have asked. It means that all 5 people have different excuses.
So you have asked that which applications are trusted that will definitely not contain virus or malware. So according to me, if I answer that, like I think there are third-party apps which are more prone to towards malware or I think viruses. But the apps or applications like which are downloaded from the trusted resources, for example, Google Play Store, Microsoft Store,
Yes,
are less prone to malware or because they are tested by the
absolutely.
companies of these app services.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Excellent. What's your name?
So Rohit Yadav.
Thank you, Raghu. Fantastic. That's exactly correct. You don't know what you're downloading may contain malware or not. And also, as you rightly said, you also don't know the something that you are downloading from Google, repositories, Play Store or whatever, or Apple Store are trustworthy. Who's going to? There are millions of applications. Okay, you can put your application also, you develop application and then can be part of Google repository or it can be there in Apple Play Store. Who guarantees you that it may not contain virus? Do you think that Apple and Google will have enough resources to check everything that you have written? They do some pre-checks, right? So many applications in these places have viruses, right? So Ken Thompson, a researcher, asked this basic question: can you trust a code that you didn't create totally yourself? You write a code, in C program, for example, or whatever language you may want to write, and compile it, and you have binary. Okay, then 100% certain that that code that you have written by yourself does not contain malware? Now I'm asking this question to other set of people. Okay, anybody can answer this?
Sir, it might contain malware.
How? Because you have written it yourself. Now you know that source code that you have written, is you're a nice person. You will not write, right? Being honest, you will not write if you have to use it for yourself. Yeah, think about. You're right. You're right. You're right. Now think. What is the reason?
So maybe the software in which we are running might do something or like something like that.
Yeah, I mean, good. Very good. So software that you're running is essentially the process of creating binary is that your software requires a lot of other libraries, right? Which gets linked to your software and finally gets, combined to form the actual runnable code. Okay, like even see you are using, it's a printf, for example. Printf by itself will require a library or some routine, right? And so we are using many operating system calls and so on and so forth. So it gets all those code from somewhere and combines it with your source code or or the binary. So overall binary is created that gets executed. How do you know something that you're at the time of linking? We'll look at this whole method little later. When you create binary, you get lot of libraries in binary form which gets attached to your binary, your corresponding your source code. How do you know that doesn't contain malware? Okay, now other thing that's also possible. How do you know the compiler? You're using some compiler written by somebody. How do you know that compiler is not inserting malware in your code? It can come, it can. Okay, all right. So we have, I mean, like as you mentioned that library, like even when you download app, even from the Play Store, 28 plus Android apps have been found which have more than 10 million downloads contain these viruses. Okay, so that's the point number one. Point number two is that even if you have written the app, you do not know that it does not contain malware because you have not written the compiler. Okay, now you look at compiler. Now fortunately compiler source code is also available. Okay, and then you look at the source code. Now compilers also requires a small compiling engine. The compiler is written a higher level language and a small part of that is binary, as you possibly know, right? Then you have to look at even that binary and you go on and go on and can you do it for every code? Where you write a program, every time different libraries may be used. Are you going to look at that, right? So as a security professional, you'll have to be suspicious always. You'll have to think that there is a possibility the code even I have written may contain malware, and you'll have to try to find out if it contains or not by looking at the behavior and so on and so forth, right? All right. So the summary is that summary of the paper. If you have time and interest, you can read this paper. Says that you can't trust a code that you didn't create totally yourself. Okay. All right. Although even the code that you have written may also contain, but the probability is quite less if you take compiler from reliable source and so on, right? And libraries also from extremely reliable sources. Otherwise, there's a good possibility that something they're downloading may have malware. All right. Now somebody may ask you, how do you define a secured system and what are the desirable properties? The rest of the course that we'll study, okay, will be based on achieving these properties. Okay, first is confidentiality, second is integrity, third is availability, fourth is authenticity, fifth is authorization, sixth is non-repudiation, then of course two are the methods of access control and privacy. Privacy is something that, you know, I mean, like your bank. You have opened an account in a bank and bank shares your information with somebody. You don't like it. Even the Google reads all our emails. I don't like it, right? And so on. Okay. Something confidential to you, something very private to you is revealed to public. All right. Okay. So CIA model is based on these three important characteristics: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And we'll focus on first four authenticity as well in the course. Okay, now let's look at what these are. Confidentiality is preventing unauthorized viewing, modification of data by third parties is if it's done, then there's no integrity, and preserving access or availability. It means that system should remain available, called availability. We'll look at these in detail. Okay, first is confidentiality. All of us know that what confidentiality is. Okay, if you're sending an email to your friend, contents of the email, which is very personal, may be very personal in nature, or it may have a lot of IPRs, right, should not be revealed to anybody else. Nobody should be able to see that. That's confidential. There are a lot of confidential documents, right? Okay, like when you write your will, okay, the will document should not be visible to people who are impacted parties. That should remain absolutely confidential. And a lot of things are confidential, right? Okay, like companies send important IPR material or secret material to a client, then client should not reveal that out, right? Okay, so confidentiality is concealment of information. Now this is an internet model. Let's assume that this Alice. We'll come with these characters little later. The Bob. Alice is sending some email, some communication to Bob, and there is a person called Eve in between. So Eve should not be able to see what communication Alice is doing with Bob. Now, she's just curious enough to see what's happening between Alice and Bob, and can eavesdrop and read the emails. So the system should not allow that. Then we can say it's confidential. Okay, it should not allow sniffing, it should not allow illegal copying. Now the question I'm asking you is that when internet is designed, or internet that we are using, does it provide confidentiality? Is it designed to provide confidentiality or not? Any one of you can answer this. You know the answer. You just take internet services from whatever service provider like Airtel or whatever, and does it guarantee, look at the document, does it guarantee you confidentiality? Whose responsibility is confidentiality then? Okay, answer this.
No, sir, it does not guarantee
Yes,
confidentiality.
very good. Internet says that my responsibility is, I will do best effort service, give me IP packet, I will try to send it to other end. That's it. Nothing more than that. It does not give you any guarantee whether your packet will reach to other end or your packet will not be seen by anybody else, then whose responsibility is to provide confidentiality? A lot of trillions of dollars are getting exchanged over the internet. Now the responsibility of providing confidentiality is between the end parties. They need to do something to have their communication confidential. And we'll look at one of that scheme or many of these schemes. And most important scheme is called encryption. If Alice encrypts the document, so if it's in plain text, it becomes encrypted text which nobody can make out easily. No one can find out what it is just reading it. And Bob receives it. Bob uses same decryption using same key which Alice has used, then can get the plain text back. Simple? All right. So these are the some more details. Now what we have discussed is actually over internet, but documents, for example, even in a hard disk should remain confidential. Okay, then what do we need to do? We need to encrypt the hard disk, right? So that's the reason in any organization you join, whatever files you keep in hard disk, they are all encrypted. So anybody, any intruder or if your laptop is stolen, then the thief will not be able to take out the information. So companies are not bothered about the cost of laptop. It's nothing compared to the information it contains, right? Okay. So common methods are data encryption and confidential about procedural means. Like we have said that we have hard disk, then we can do something, right? If hard disk you keep it in a locker, then it's safe, right? So nobody else can read. So there can be multiple ways of providing procedural confidentiality. For example, there may be a laptop and you have a security guard, and only people who are absolutely trustworthy and who are allowed, authorized to do that, can access that. That's another way of providing confidentiality. Okay, all right. Second property is integrity. Now again, we want to, over internet, we want to achieve integrity as well, right? Confidentiality is very important. Second is integrity. What is integrity? How is it different from confidentiality? Integrity means that Alice is sending something to Bob, okay? Some very important communication, okay? Maybe some personal message, something like that, I love you or whatever. And Eve actually doesn't like this relationship. So Eve can send a message to Bob pretending as Alice. She may pretend as Alice, say that I hate you. Okay, now Bob getting that message, this I hate you comes from Alice, but actually it has come from Eve. So now integrity here is not achieved. So on internet, we or anywhere else, we, in regular system, we want integrity should be preserved. Okay, all right. So integrity here can be tempered by somebody in between. Will receive this message from Alice, which says that I love you, for example, and will absorb this message and changes it to I hate you. And of course, this message comes with the name of Alice. All right. So integrity is prevention of unauthorized changes. Now the question is that again, internet does not guarantee integrity. Your message in between can be seen by anybody else, right? Of course, I mean ISPs, your ISP may be whatever, okay? okay, this message is not going only through one router, it is going through multiple routers. In between, it can be taken out and changed, right? So the question that is that how do we achieve integrity in this environment, which is internet, or the system internet, which is absolutely open, which is full of leaks that we will see. Okay, all right. Okay, so there are methods like cryptographic checksums, error correcting codes, and managing the integrity of people. For example, in any organization, most of the organizations, I won't say every, you join, integrity becomes very important thing, that you have access to the source code of the company, which company has created over last 10-15 years. They're very important source code, and they are earning millions of dollars. Is you have access to this source code. Can you sell this source code of your own? Or when you resign, can you take this source code? Of course, no, it's a property of the company. Now, this is integrity of employees that needs to be checked, corrected. So there are a lot of system in any organization they keep checking what employees have sent. Okay, so a lot of big companies, HR, there are a few HR managers whose job is to see what employees are posting on websites and so on and so forth, right? So there are ways to control or manage the integrity of employees. All right. In a system, this is usually cryptographic checksums, which we'll study later. Okay. Some of the one example is man in the middle. Like man in the middle can alter the contents of email or data in transit. It's like this one. This is a man in the middle. MITM is called. Eve in between receives message or content sent by Alice and changes this content, send this to destination, which is Bob here. Okay. Any question? Okay. Third important property is availability. Now, for example, Amazon is getting all the money by running servers. And these servers can be over cloud or whatever. And they do all kinds of electronic transactions. And of course, provide resources like VMs, etc. Or Amazon cloud, or So now, like, let's go to Amazon.com and we want to buy some stuff from there, right? Now look at this server design, right? It's almost up, it's 100% up all the time, 24/7. And I'm competitor of this Amazon. I want Amazon to make losses. What should I do? If I am evil guy, I will make sure that Amazon doesn't receive these messages. How do I do that? All these messages are received, but they are not processed in time. So if a customer takes, if customer get response in 5 minutes, the customer will not do the transaction, right? See, what I can do is that to this Amazon server, maybe let's assume just single server now, I can send tons of messages from hundreds of my small VMs or computers or clients. Okay, I will send trillions of messages, or billions, if not trillions. What will happen? Now, server has to respond whatever it receives, right? Okay, if now whatever customer is trying to send now, that will get a chance only after certain time, say 5 minutes or so. Okay, so I am denying, me as an evil person is denying services to other clients. So it's called then denial of service attack, DOS attack. Okay, we'll study that later. But what is impacted here? Availability of the system is impacted. All right. So availability is ability to use information of resources. So if Alice wants to send something to Bob, now these services, it can overwhelm Eve in between. No, not I will say word Mallory here. Eve is little less malicious. Mallory can overwhelm this machine by sending lot of messages or disrupt communication between the two. Okay, so the availability is lost. Okay, and we can achieve this by various means, like we can create redundant system. Instead of having one server, you can see Amazon has hundreds of servers, maybe multiple servers, right, at different locations. Okay. All right, now please go through this. Next property is authenticity. So two properties we have studied so far: confidentiality whatever is Alice is sending to Bob must be known only to two parties. No third person can even see that. Okay. Second is integrity. So what happens in integrity is Alice is sending something to Bob. It should, in the first case, confidential, it should not be seen by somebody. In this case, no third party like Mallory should be able to alter this. Say, for example, I love you to I hate you. Now, what is third important characteristic? What is authenticity then? When Bob is receiving mail from Alice or communication from it, Bob should be 100% certain that this is authentic, is coming actually from Alice, not from somebody else. That's called authenticity. Okay. So it means that now Mallory is sending something to Bob pretending as Alice, then authenticity is lost. Is unauthorized assumption of somebody else's identity. Okay, all right. So the three important properties we have studied: confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. Now we want to achieve all these in internet, because internet doesn't provide authenticity as well. Okay, you can ask why, how? You create, I can always create, if I know your IP address, okay, I can always create a packet that contains your IP source code, the source IP address, your IP address. Okay. All right, so there's no authenticity, and I can send it to whomever I want to send it to. The person will take your packet and think that it has come from you. All right. Can it be harmful? Yes, can be very harmful for system, right? Say for example, you may want to trouble your friend. Now think like as a thief or criminal, right? Then you will get the answer. Then you can also think how to take care of it, right? You write a letter to some authority in your institute, okay, just plain letter, and you have some people you don't like, you write whatever you may want to write, and now sender's name is, or whatever at the bottom of the letter, you write that person's name and just drop it, right? Make sure nobody sees it, right? What will happen when the authority will open this letter, read it, will think that it has come from somebody else. Okay, all right. So that's how the authenticity is lost here. Now there are various kinds of authenticity we may want to achieve, like entity authentication. So entity authentication is the party who's sending, like if Alice is sending, we should ensure that it's actually coming from that person, right, or identity of the party. Now in also we require, yeah, can you mute yourself? Okay. And then there is a data origin authentication. Right, internet we require data origin authentication. Actually, the IP packets are coming from the source which it's supposed to come from, right? Okay. All right, and there are various methods to achieve authentication is access control and like digital certificates, which we'll study later. Also, we'll study all these access control mechanisms possibly in the next class. Third, so all right, so what we have covered now: confidentiality, integrity, authenticity, and also availability in very brief, right? Next is authorization. Okay, so this CIA model we have covered so far. So if somebody asks you in an interview, what is objective, what do you mean by security or cyber security, you will say that we want to achieve confidentiality, integrity, authenticity, and availability. Okay. The other property that we will study today is authorization, right? Okay, it's basically authorized access or is access control mechanisms. Okay, you just walk into, you say, all right, let me just walk into an office of Prime Minister of India. Can you do that? Okay, so there is office, you can go up to that office, say I want to meet the Prime Minister. So the person will ask, who are you and who has authorized you to enter or meet the Prime Minister? Okay, you said nobody, then they will say no, we cannot allow, right? So while you may want to meet, for example, instead of Prime Minister of India, your local MP, right? And then MP would have said, okay, following people can meet me at any time when I am in office. So it will be based on some policy that MP or member of parliament has set for people to meet, right? So authorization is always governed by policy, because for example, as a CEO of a company, I cannot, or if I am CEO, I cannot set the policies, cannot tell the security guard or front staff to let some people in. I will set the policy. If somebody comes to meet the CEO of, say, IBM, then same question will arise, that who is authorized the person, what are the policies, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, there in some organization there is a policy that the relatives of an employee cannot enter the employee premises. Some have policy that spouses can enter. So that security policies are there right in the beginning. Some companies have policies that even CEO cannot enter the office if the CEO cannot prove his identity. Okay, so all kinds of policies are there, right? But authorization say that who all can get into the office. All right, okay. Now something that's also important is non-repudiation, accountability, and non-repudiation. What is non-repudiation? Anyone? You would have come across this term, right? It's a legal term. Okay, with example, right? Alice is sending something to Bob. Okay, let's see. Just let's come across. Alice sends a message to Bob that I owe you $1,000. Okay, so maybe Bob has given $1,000 to Alice, and then asked Bob then ask Alice over phone that okay, send me an email that you owe me $1,000. So later on, I will remember this. Okay. Later on, Alice says that okay. When Bob says return my money, the Alice says that okay, I told you that I owe you only $50. Now can now Bob go to the court and prove that Alice has actually owes me $1,000 and that email has come from Alice and that's authentic email. So this property says that Alice should not be able to deny that she has sent this email. Okay, and so in court you should be able to prove, or Bob should be able to prove, that Alice owes me $1,000 because she has sent me this message. Okay, all right. So this is the ability to identify principals responsible for past action. Okay, it's achieved in general by transaction evidence or logs. So the principal, or for example, in this case Alice, cannot later credibly deny previous commitment or actions, and that's called non-repetition. Non-repetition is ability of system to confirm that a sender cannot convincingly deny having sent something. All right. Okay. So how do we achieve this internet again? Otherwise, if non-repetition is not there, then we can't do any transaction, including like you do Google Pay or UPI transactions. You can't do any of this without non-repetition. In fact, look at UPI transactions. You will achieve all these properties: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and non-repetition. All right. Any question? Then access control. When you use this word, when there is you may want to enter your office where you work, and then you will ask to provide an identity. Right? Identity could be your ID card, could be your fingerprint or face recognition, fingerprint, this is called biometrics, or it could be a OTP on your mobile phone, anything. Okay, now you are able to prove your identity, you are allowed to get into the office, right? I cannot just walk into next door office. The nearest office is just, say for example, 1 kilometer from my house, of multinational company, and I show them my Aadhaar card. They won't let me in because I am not authorized to get into any office showing my some ID card. It has to be provided by the company. Okay, And when say, okay, I will go to biometric, where biometric sensor is there, and then it will recognize that I am not the person authorized to enter. Okay. So now these mechanisms are called access control. We see access control everywhere. You know, simplest is that even your laptop doesn't trust you. In some sense, it asks you for user ID and password, right? Or it uses biometrics. There's no question of trust in cyber security. You cannot trust anybody. And you will be surprised to know most of the ransomware attacks happen where companies' internal employees are involved in cybercrime. And this significant number, sometimes people say 20% plus, cyber crimes happen with the help of somebody who's internal. So basic thing is a zero trust model. Don't trust anybody. Then your system should be more secure than other cases. So now we see access control everywhere, like your fingerprint or your ID, swiping your ID card, nothing else than you have a security guard in front. If there are just 5-10 employees, the person security guard knows them by face, and so on and so forth, right? So we have now access control requires authentication. Okay, is the user is the one who claims that they are, like, you know, I may be MD of a company, but I may not be authorized to enter certain parts of the company. Okay, and it happens in many organizations. The CEO is not allowed to access the code. But authentication says that I must authenticate myself. I mean, I have user ID and password or whatever, or biometrics, and I am allowed to use the resource. Authorization is somebody will authorize me to use the resources, right? Like even for CEO will be authorized to use some certain facilities and not authorized to use, for example, source code. Maybe. If CEO is a techie, then possibly yes, but otherwise may be denied. Okay. Access control says that policy and enforcement procedure. How do we achieve this? Okay. So there is a subject, a person, process, or program, and there's object, you know, some resource. Then there is a policies that who says that who all can access this, and access could be read, write, or execute, and so on, right? So it's this mechanism wherein subject is allowed to use the resources based on authentication and authorization is called access control. Okay, all right. So now we have covered many points. We have started to confidentiality, integrity, authentication, availability, non-repudiation, and then we have also what here? Okay, now we are studying access control. Access control we see everywhere, right? On airports, we see in offices, your cinema hall, wherever. You have to show identity of yourself, and then you are allowed to access resources. Privacy is another important property. I don't want my information to be available to public. Okay. So privacy involves personally sensitive information, how to protect, control, and share it. Like I don't want my email address, home address, PAN, social security number, passport number, credit card number, my Aadhaar number, etc. to be known to everyone. Okay, I don't want my date of birth also to be known to people, because date of birth also is very important security parameter to recover passwords sometimes. Okay. So as a caution, if you have in a Facebook, if you have entered the data corresponding to date of birth or is visible to everybody, then it's a security threat. Now, opposite of that is anonymity. A person's action or involvement are not linkable to public's identity. Now, anonymity may also not be preferred, right? Because person can remain anonymous and do all kinds of crime. All right. Now, the question that I'm asking in the next 2 minutes is that this is ISP. It could be Airtel or whatever, or Jio or any AT&T or whatever. Alice is sending mail to Bob. Do you think that nobody is and is going through, of course, number ISP and many other routers? Do you think the Alice mail is not seen by anybody? Is internet is designed for confidential, so privacy here? Is it private? It's not seen by SP and not spread given to his sales guys. No, so answer is absolutely not. ISPs can see everything that you are sending. Okay, they see all the traffic and communication. Do ISP know what IP address you are using? Of course, yes, because only they provide it. Okay, do you think the government is not seeing it? Government has a law, all governments have a law wherein they can get all the information that Alice is sending to Bob or Bob is sending to Alice. Okay, all right. So don't think that what you are sending on internet is not visible to anybody else. And your ISPs know it. Now you can be smart. You encrypt the message. You encrypt it using some encryption algorithm. Now ISPs can't do much about it. They can't decrypt it, right? So that's one way to achieve some of these security properties. But still, your source address and your source port and destination IP address and so on, like, is always in plain text. So at least ISPs will know who is sending whom. Okay, all right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. We have some of us have an offline class. Be starting in 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. So I'm done. Okay, please go through it. The last point is the weakest link in security chain is human being. So which we know that, right? That all right. So today we have studied all these properties. Please go through the PPT again. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.